I figured this would be a good opportunity to do something a little bit different than just a standard typed response. So I wanted to talk today about dictionaries. Dictionaries were one of my earliest loves. In fact, one of my first memories is reading entries from the American Heritage my first dictionary, which I actually won in my first grade spelling bee. Anyway, if that gives you a baseline of where this presentation is going. So to talk a little bit about the history of dictionaries. Dictionaries did not start in the form that we know them in today. They started in, you can trace them back millennia, but specifically talking about English dictionaries and how we use them today in the English language. They actually started as in Old English as interlinear glosses. And so the first 2 or 3 examples I'm going to show you on my laptop because I do not own an 8th century Vespasian Psalter. Forgive me, my book purchasing funds can't cover that. But this entry, and I'll link it in the discussion, shows some beautiful scans from this Psalter, specifically Psalm 68. And you can see that some enterprising scholar has gone through and has written the Old English translation of the Latin text in the space above the lines. And this medievalist has a lovely printing of the Old English, the Latin, and the contemporary English there. So feel free to try reading some Old English yourself. It's much closer to German than it is to English, so enjoy that. From there, we're going to jump forward about 7 centuries to the 16th century. We're going to look at the Bulliker family, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that name, but it's a father and son. William Bulliker was the father, and he published an orthography. So an orthography is kind of dictionary adjacent, talking about talking about grammar. And this is a beautiful scan of the facsimile that the British National Library holds. And so I'll post a link to this scan. But it kind of goes through both the grammar and, interestingly enough, several of the most popular fonts in the English language at that time. So it's kind of neat to see what you might have seen from various printers and what the different fonts were called, that kind of thing. Now his son, not to be outdone by his father, decided to print decided to print an English expositor. So this is Joseph Bulliker is printing this in the early 1600s or the mid 1640s was the first printing. And so this is a scan that Google Books has, once again from the British National Library. These are a little bit more common, and it is neat. Let me scroll forward a few pages because this is where we see for the first time, really, the words that we expect in alphabetical order with common language definitions. So what you expect from a contemporary dictionary. So from here, we're going to move into what I have in front of me. We will jump across the ocean, head to colonial America, and then just after the Revolution, with Noah Webster, who we touched on a little bit in our intellectual property section. He was very proudly defending the concept of copyright and an author's ownership of his works. And his works were mighty big. His dictionary was printed, I'll back up a little bit. He's very well known for what's known as the blueback. This was a spelling book that generations of American students learned how to spell from. This is a reproduction of one from like the 1910s, and as you can see, it's teaches them not only how to spell but how to write. It even touches on some foreign languages too, like French and German in here a little bit. So these were extremely common, but he also is known for his dictionary. And so this is a pretty special, specifically a special addition to me personally. As I said in the class introduction, I am a former journalist for the South Bend Tribune, and when the South Bend Tribune was downsizing the in-newsroom library a little bit, the South Bend Tribune copy of Webster's New International Dictionary, 2nd edition, needed to find a home, and it literally was just placed on my desk without asking me because they knew I would take it home. So this, going from, I think the big difference you see in dictionaries across time is a difference in size. So you're going from interlinear glosses to the stuff produced by the Bullocker family, which was, I think, the Williams was 56 pages, where Joseph's was a little bit longer, but not too much longer, to this behemoth. And so you're starting to see just an increase in volume. It's showing an increase in our knowledge of our own language and our ability to put that knowledge into a physical product. So here, you see not only definitions, this is really interesting, you're seeing, and this one's printed in the 1940s, so obviously even several centuries after Webster's death, but you're seeing images printed amongst the lines, which shows you that we're expanding beyond just words used to describe other words. You're seeing images of what you're trying to define. So going from this, just to do one other illustration with Webster, this is roughly the same dictionary as this. It is cut from the same definitions, but this one is printed about 70 years later. I was gifted this one when I started my undergraduate years, and used it all through college. So, but it's interesting to see that that same definition block was still being used decades later. So, to move on from Webster just briefly, we will cycle back to the Webster Company. So Noah Webster was the late 1700s, early 1800s. The Oxford English Dictionary starts in Oxford, or in London, with the Philological Society of London in 1857. And this group of nerds decided that they wanted to put together a dictionary over there because Noah Webster was very successful with his. And so they set out on this project. They're like, we're going to take 5 years, we're going to define the English language, and more importantly, we're going to find first references of these words in print in the English language, and we are going to find the word origins. Well, a 5-year project turned into a 10-year project, and then it turned into, well, within 10 years we only have up to A and T done, so we should probably start releasing this in little bits. And so they released the first copies of the OED, as it's called, using fascicles, which little booklets basically. So nowadays the OED is the biggest dictionary in the world. It is the biggest dictionary in the English language, obviously. And we do have access through it through IUPUI's library. If you go to databases and you search OED, you can find it there. They do words of the day, which is really cool. Your little touch of the history of the English language. But just to show you, this one in particular is a compact OED. This was one of my favorite books that I've ever gotten. I was gifted this for my birthday from a very dear friend. And it's compact not in amount of definitions, because you still have the same number of definitions here. It is compact in format. So as you can see, it comes in a box, 2 volumes, and it has a drawer on top of the box that contains a magnifying glass, because inside the dictionary, each page is actually 4 pages of definitions, and so you have to read it with a magnifying glass or unless you have phenomenal eyesight or get very close to the page, you will not be able to see it. As you can see, the OED does not prioritize images with its definitions. Kind of gives it more space for all that extra information that you are getting with each word. So, from the interlinear, very tiny dictionaries to these massive dictionaries of the, we'll say 18th and 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, we go to, we kind of hit the digital age. And from the digital age, we start shrinking. So you see the invention of pocket dictionaries. So this one was the dictionary I kept in my backpack all through high school. As you can see, it's very well worn, but it is a Webster dictionary and uses definitions from the same dictionary block as the Unabridged. So it's funny that you get the same definition in 3 different books. To where I now see the future, the present and future of dictionaries are niche dictionaries. So you have like foreign language dictionaries, which fit a very small niche market. So here I have a Japanese English dictionary, a French English dictionary, Irish, German, and then Indo-European and Proto-Indo-European, which is where all of European languages come from. That's like the mother tongue there. And then other niche dictionaries like thesauruses, rhyming dictionaries, dictionaries for kids, and then where I truly see the future and where you see it every year where it's announced like Merriam-Webster or Oxford's adding words to the dictionary, because English is a living language. I see like slang dictionaries, and Urban Dictionary here is a great example of a slang dictionary. This thing was probably out of date when it hit the shelves just because that thing is updated and basically in real time. But it's a good example of where words that here were kind of locked into the same definition from the 1700s on, it shows that they can change. And so it's great to see that English is still a living language. And this was really fun showing everything off here. So let me know if you guys have any questions. And thanks. Have a good night.